power of narrative is so strong. Even though we are the victims of that narrative, we buy that narrative. This cherry picking about what should be a level playing field, what should not, what should be open and what should not. At the end of the day, it is all about freezing leads which countries have acquired. In the name of globalization, there are enormous concentrations that have been created. I think this is something which we need to reflect on, because sometimes the power of narrative is so strong. Even though we are the victims of that narrative, we buy that narrative. We are often convinced ourselves that we are naysayers and very casually advocate at times, saying, you know, the entire world is out there, why are we holding out, it makes us look bad. When every time we have actually said no, there are serious stakes in question. And that is something which he has brought out very, very well. So, and you know, the power of the narrative is also important to realize, because he uses the Uruguay round to demonstrate how inequities were normalized. That how the world was made to believe, you know, there's free trade everywhere. Oh, by the way, it doesn't apply to food, and it doesn't apply to clothing. It doesn't apply to drugs. It doesn't apply to intellectual property rights. So this cherry picking about what should be a level playing field, what should not, what should be open and what should not. At the end of the day, it is all about freezing leads which countries have acquired. And we see this most starkly in the UN Security Council, that those who have acquired dominance, especially economic dominance, will, through a process of negotiation, through shaping of narratives, create systems which would often appear fair, even if they are not. And I think that is something which comes through very powerful in his book. Now, having noted that, let me also, from my own side, utter another word of caution, which is the importance of not falling for the globalization narrative. Because, again, a lot of our economic discussions seem to suggest that openness is good for the sake of openness. Now, if you look at the state of the world and you look at the state of economies, including our own, I think the data would point to the contrary. That in fact today, in the name of globalization, there are enormous concentrations that have been created. Those concentrations are leveraged in different ways. And what actually COVID has done great damage health-wise and social fabric-wise and economically. But COVID has reopened the debate about strategic autonomy. Strategic autonomy not in a nuclear sense, but strategic autonomy in an economic sense, in a cultural sense, in a supply chain sense, in a technology sense. That today we need to ask ourselves, actually, are we wise opening for the sake of opening? And I think that is very much a caution that the government has in its mind as we debate a lot of the free trade agreements and other regimes and other negotiations that we are looking at.